Dr. Minho stepped off the transport ship onto the crystalline surface of the Velthari homeworld, his heart pounding with excitement and terror. This was it, humanity's first real chance at making friends with an alien species that had been watching them from the shadows for decades. The Velthari had finally agreed to meet, but their message had been cold and unwelcoming. The alien city stretched before them like something from a dream. Towers of pure crystal reached toward purple skies, humming with energy that made the hair on Minho's arm stand up. Everything was perfect, clean, and ancient beyond human understanding. It made Earth's greatest cities look like children's sandcastles. Hana waited for them at the landing platform, and Minho knew immediately that she despised everything about him and his team. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her skin shimmering, like polished metal, with eyes that held the weight of thousands of years. When she looked at the humans, her expression showed the same disgust someone might have for insects crawling through their kitchen. "I am Hana of the Third Eternal Council," she announced, her voice carrying an accent that sounded like music played on broken glass. "I have been assigned to supervise your presence here. Do not touch anything. Do not wander. Do not speak." "Unless spoken to," Minho's teammate Jae-sung whispered. "Friendly bunch, aren't they?" But Minho hushed him quickly. They couldn't afford to mess this up. As Hana led them through the city, she made no effort to hide her feelings. "Your species spreads across the galaxy like a disease," she said matter-of-factly. "Destroying worlds, consuming resources, leaving waste wherever you go. We have watched you for 50 of your years, and we see nothing but violence and greed. That's not fair." Minho finally spoke up, unable to stay quiet any longer. "Yes, we've made mistakes, but we're trying to learn. We're trying to be better." Hana turned to stare at him with those ancient eyes. "Better? Your kind wages war over patches of dirt. You poison your own world for profit. You create weapons that could destroy entire star systems. What could you possibly teach a civilization that has lived in peace for 10,000 years?" The tour continued in uncomfortable silence until they reached the city's heart, a massive crystal structure that pulsed with soft blue light. Hana explained that it was their primary energy source, something that had powered their civilization since before humans discovered fire. "This core connects to every building, every ship, every life support system on our world," she said with obvious pride. "It is more sacred to us than anything in your primitive understanding." That's when everything went wrong. Jae-sung, trying to get a better look at the incredible technology, leaned against what looked like a simple railing. But it wasn't a railing. It was part of the core's control system. Alarms began screaming immediately, and the beautiful blue light started flickering red. Hana's face twisted with rage and terror. "You fool, you've disrupted the quantum matrix. If this destabilizes, it could destroy half the city." The other Velthari in the chamber began evacuating, their calm demeanor shattered. Minho watched in horror as energy readings on nearby displays climbed toward dangerous levels. His teammate had just accidentally triggered what could be the worst disaster in diplomatic history. "How do we fix it?" Minho shouted over the alarms. "You cannot," Hana snarled. "Your ignorant species has doomed thousands of innocent lives." But Minho was already moving, studying the alien controls with desperate intensity. He might not understand their technology, but he understood energy systems. The patterns were similar to fusion reactors back on Earth, just impossibly more advanced. "There," he pointed at a cluster of crystals that were glowing brighter than the others. "Those are the overflow regulators, aren't they? If I can manually balance the load—" "Do not touch anything else," Hana screamed, but Minho was already reaching for the crystals. The energy coursing through them was so intense it felt like grabbing lightning. Pain shot through his entire body, but he held on, using his knowledge of Earth technology to guide the alien systems back toward stability. When the alarms finally stopped and the blue light returned, Minho collapsed to the crystal floor, his hands burned and his body shaking from electrical shock. Hana stared down at him in complete silence, her expression unreadable. For the first time since the humans had arrived, she wasn't looking at him like he was an insect. The next morning, Minho woke up in what looked like a hospital room made entirely of crystal. His hands were wrapped in some kind of glowing bandages that felt cool against his burned skin. When he tried to sit up, every muscle in his body screamed in protest from yesterday's electrical shock. Hana stood by the window, staring out at the city. She hadn't noticed he was awake yet, and for the first time, Minho saw her without that mask of disgust she always wore. She looked troubled. "The damage is worse than we thought," she said without turning around. "The quantum matrix is still unstable. Our engineers estimate it will take 300 years to fully repair using traditional methods." Minho's heart sank. 300 years meant this diplomatic mission was over before it really began. Earth couldn't wait that long for an alliance, especially with other hostile alien species lurking in the galaxy. "What if we don't use traditional methods?" he asked. Now Hana did turn around, and that familiar look of annoyance returned to her face. "Your reckless approach already caused this disaster. We will not make it worse by rushing." But what if rushing is exactly what we need to do? For the next week, Minho found himself working alongside Hana in the core chamber, though she made it clear this was punishment, not partnership. The Velthari had decided that since he broke it, he could help fix it, under strict supervision, of course. Watching the Velthari engineers work was like watching grass grow. They would spend entire days just thinking about a single adjustment, running calculations that filled crystal tablets the size of dinner tables. Everything had to be perfect, tested 1,000 times, approved by 7 different councils. How? "Did you ever build this city if you work this slowly?" Minho asked during one particularly frustrating day. "We built it over 5,000 years, Hana replied coldly. "Patience creates perfection. Haste creates disasters, as you have proven." But Minho couldn't help himself. While the Velthari engineers debated the safest way to adjust one small component, he noticed something they had missed entirely. The quantum matrix wasn't just damaged. It was trying to evolve, to adapt to the disruption. The energy patterns were shifting in ways that looked chaotic, but actually followed a deeper logic. "Look at this," he said, pointing to the readings on his handheld scanner. "The matrix isn't breaking down, it's reorganizing itself. If we work with these new patterns instead of fighting them—" "Absolutely not," the lead Velthari engineer declared. "The matrix must be returned to its original configuration. Anything else is too dangerous." But Hana was studying Minho's readings with growing interest. "Show me what you see," she said quietly. Minho pulled up a holographic display of the energy flows. "Here, see how the quantum streams are forming new pathways. In human engineering, we call this adaptive resonance. Instead of forcing the system back to its old state, we guide it toward a new stable configuration." "That's impossible," Hana said, but her voice lacked its usual certainty. "Our mathematics prove that only the original pattern can maintain stability." "Your mathematics assume the system can't change," Minho replied. "But what if it can learn?" What happened next would be talked about in Velthari academic circles for generations. Minho, ignoring the protests of everyone in the room, began making rapid adjustments to the quantum matrix. His movements looked completely random to the Velthari. He was changing settings faster than they could calculate the consequences, making intuitive leaps that defied their careful logic. Hana watched in fascination and horror as this human did everything wrong according to Velthari science. He didn't run simulations. He didn't consult probability matrices. He just felt his way through the system, responding to changes as they happened. "Stop!" the lead engineer shouted. "You're going to destroy the entire grid." But the readings were improving. The chaotic energy flows were settling into new patterns that were actually more stable than the original design. The quantum matrix wasn't just fixed, it was better than before. When the last warning light turned green and the EU core hummed with perfect harmony, the chamber fell completely silent. The Velthari engineers stared at their instruments in disbelief. What should have taken centuries had been accomplished in hours. Hana looked at Minho with something that might have been respect. "How did you know that would work?" Minho shrugged, exhausted but smiling. "I didn't. But sometimes you have to trust that the universe is smarter than you are." For the first time since the humans had arrived, Hana smiled back. It was a small smile, barely noticeable, But it changed. Everything. Maybe these humans weren't quite as primitive as she had thought. 3 days after fixing the quantum matrix, Minho collapsed during a routine meeting with the Velthari Council. One moment he was explaining human terraforming techniques. The next he was on the crystal floor, his body convulsing as strange blue veins appeared under his skin. Energy poisoning, the Velthari medical examiner announced after a quick scan. The quantum exposure from his contact with the core has been building up in his system. His primitive biology cannot process it. Hana knelt beside Minho as his teammates gathered around in panic. His skin was burning hot, and those blue veins were spreading up his arms and neck like some kind of infection. She had seen energy poisoning before in young Velthari who worked too closely with unstable quantum fields, but they could survive it. Humans apparently could not. "How long does he have?" she asked. "Perhaps 6 of your hours," the examiner replied with cold indifference. "Possibly less. There is nothing to be done. Human physiology lacks the quantum filtering organs necessary for treatment." Jae-sung grabbed the examiner by the arm. "There has to be something. Some kind of medicine, some procedure. Your species should have considered this risk before interfering with technology beyond your understanding," the examiner said, pulling free. "This is simply natural selection at work." Hana watched Minho's face contort in pain, and something twisted in her chest, an uncomfortable feeling she couldn't identify. In her 3,000 years of life, she had seen countless beings die. Death was simply part of the natural order, no more significant than a flower wilting or a star burning out. So why did watching this one human suffer make her feel so wrong? That night, while Minho's condition worsened in the medical facility, Hana found herself pacing her chambers. She kept thinking about his smile when he had fixed the quantum matrix, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about exploring the galaxy, how he had risked his own safety to prevent disaster in the core chamber. The uncomfortable feeling in her chest was getting worse. By the 4th hour, Minho was unconscious and barely breathing. His teammates had given up hope, sitting by his bedside in stunned silence. The human diplomatic mission would end here, with their leader dying from trying to help her people. Hana made her decision in that moment, though she knew it would destroy everything she had built over millennia. "Leave us," she told the humans. When they hesitated, she added more gently, "Please, there is something I must try, but it cannot be witnessed." Once they were gone, Hana placed her hands on Minho's burning forehead and began to whisper words in the ancient Velthari tongue, words that hadn't been spoken aloud for over 1,000 years. The resonance of life-sharing was forbidden because it created a quantum bond between two beings, something that went against every principle of Velthari emotional detachment. As she chanted, her crystalline skin began to glow, and that glow spread down her arms and into Minho's body. She felt his pain as if it were her own, experienced his memories flashing through her consciousness, saw glimpses of his childhood on Earth, his dreams of peaceful contact with alien civilizations, his loneliness among the stars. But more than that, she felt his mortality, the constant awareness that his time was limited, that every moment mattered because there were only so many of them. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. The healing took hours. Hana poured her own life energy into Minho's failing body, using quantum resonance to filter the poison from his system. When it was finally over, the blue veins had faded from his skin and his breathing had returned to normal. But Hana collapsed beside the bed, weaker than she had ever felt in her long life. The next morning, news of what she had done spread through the Velthari city like wildfire. The resonance of life-sharing was not just forbidden, it was considered a form of contamination. By bonding with a human, Hana had made herself unfit for Velthari society. When Minho woke up, the first thing he saw was Hana sitting beside his bed, but she looked different somehow. Less perfect, more fragile. "What did you do?" he asked, though part of him already knew. "I saved your life," she replied simply. "And in doing so, I may have lost everything else." "Why?" The question came out as barely a whisper. Hana was quiet, for a long moment staring at her hands. "I do not know," she admitted, For 3,000 years I have watched beings live and die without feeling anything. But the thought of losing you—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Outside, the medical facility, angry voices were calling for Hana's exile. She had broken one of their most sacred laws for a human, a primitive, short-lived creature who would be dust long before she reached her 4th millennium. But as Minho reached out and took her hand, Hana realized she didn't regret it at all. During Minho's recovery, Hana found herself spending more and more time in the medical facility. At first, she told herself it was just to monitor his condition. After all, she had used forbidden techniques to save him. But deep down, she knew the truth. She enjoyed talking with him in a way she hadn't enjoyed anything in centuries. "I still don't understand why you did it," Minho said one evening, as they watched the twin moons rise over the crystal city. "You risked everything to save someone you barely know." Hana was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the window. "In 3,000 years I have never felt fear like that," she admitted. "The fear of losing something precious before I truly understood what it was." 3,000 years, Minho repeated, shaking his head. "I can't even imagine that much time. What's it like knowing you'll live forever?" "Empty," Hana said without hesitation. "You wake up each day knowing that nothing you do truly matters because you have infinite days ahead of you. Why hurry to achieve anything when you have eternity? Why form deep connections when you know you'll eventually grow tired of everyone around you?" Minho studied her face in the moonlight. "Is that why your people seem so cold?" "We call it wisdom," Hana replied with a bitter smile. "After watching civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore, you learn not to become attached to anything temporary. But perhaps what we call wisdom is actually just fear. Fear of caring too much, about things we might lose. But that's exactly what makes life beautiful," Minho said, his voice growing passionate. "Knowing that everything ends makes every moment count. When I was dying from the energy poisoning, I wasn't thinking about all the things I hadn't accomplished. Yet, I was thinking about a sunset I watched on Earth when I was 12, the taste of my grandmother's soup, the first time I looked through a telescope and saw the rings of Saturn." Hana listened with growing fascination as Minho continued. "Humans don't create art or music or literature because we have forever to perfect them. We create them because we need to leave something behind, some proof that we existed, and that how a brief time here mattered. But the pain," Hana said quietly, "how do you bear knowing that everyone you love will die, that you yourself will die?" "The same way you bear knowing that nothing you do will ever really end," Minho replied. "I guess we're both afraid. You're afraid of caring too much, and we're afraid of not caring enough while we still have time." Their conversations continued for days, each sharing stories from their vastly different worlds. Hana told him about the early days of Velthari civilization, when they were still mortal and driven by the same urgent passions that defined humanity. Minho shared Earth's history, the wars and disasters, yes, but also the incredible achievements that came from people knowing their time was limited. "Sometimes I wonder what I could have accomplished if I had only a human lifetime," Hana mused one night. "If I knew I only had 70 or 80 years, would I have used them better? And sometimes I wonder what we could learn if we had your perspective," Minho replied. "If we could see the long view of history, maybe we wouldn't make the same mistakes over and over." It was during one of these conversations that Jae-sung burst into the room, his face pale with terror. "They're coming," he gasped. "The Velthari Council, they've ordered our immediate execution." Hana stood up so quickly she knocked over her chair. "What?" "They say we're a contaminating influence," Jae-sung explained, glancing nervously at Hana. "That our presence has already corrupted one of their people beyond redemption. They've decided that all humans must be eliminated to prevent further contamination." Minho felt his blood turn to ice. "How long do we have?" "The execution squad is already mobilizing. Maybe an hour, if we're lucky." Hana was pacing now, her mind racing. She could hear the distant sound of Velthari military units moving through the crystal corridors. In moments they would surround the medical facility, and there would be no escape for the humans. "There's a service tunnel that leads to the transport bay," she said suddenly. "If we move now, I can get you to your ship." "You can't," Min-ho protested. "If they find out you helped us escape—" "I'm already marked as contaminated," Hana replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was choosing. "Helping you now won't make my situation any worse," but they both knew that wasn't true. Helping foreign prisoners escape execution would be considered treason of the highest order. Hana wouldn't just be exiled, she would be hunted across the galaxy. As alarms began blaring throughout the city, Hana looked at Min-ho one last time. "Your people are right about one thing," she said. "When time is limited, every choice becomes important." Together, they ran toward an uncertain future, leaving behind everything Hana had ever known. For the first time in 3,000 years, she was truly afraid and truly alive. 5 years had passed since the escape from the Velthari homeworld, and Min-ho found himself staring out the viewport of humanity's newest exploration vessel, the Soul's Pride. The ship was everything Earth's engineers had dreamed of, faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything they'd built before. Yet somehow, every victory felt hollow. "Captain, we've successfully established the mining colony on Kepler 442b, his first officer reported. "The settlers are already extracting rare metals that will advance our technology by decades." Min-ho nodded absently. Another successful mission, another step forward for humanity's expansion across the galaxy. On paper, he was the most successful explorer in human history. He had discovered 17 habitable worlds, established 12 colonies, and made peaceful contact with 3 different alien species, but none of it felt real anymore. Late at night, when the ship was quiet and his crew was asleep, Min-ho would replay conversations with Hana in his mind. Her voice explaining Velthari philosophy, her laugh when he made a joke she actually understood, the way her eyes lit up when they solved problems together. He had tried to convince himself that what he felt was just gratitude for her saving his life, but 5 years of hollow achievements had proven otherwise. Meanwhile, on a forgotten moon at the edge of Velthari space, Hana lived in self-imposed exile. The small research station she had built was barely more than a shelter, but it contained the most advanced quantum laboratory outside of the Velthari homeworld. She spent her days diving deep into ancient texts and forbidden research, searching for something that most of her people considered impossible. The Velthari had achieved immortality through quantum consciousness binding. Their minds were locked into crystalline matrices that prevented aging and death. But every process could theoretically be reversed if one was willing to pay the price. "Day 1047 of exile," she spoke into her research log. "I have identified 3 potential methods for voluntary quantum dissolution. Each carries significant risks, and all result in the same outcome: transformation from immortal to mortal biology. Life expectancy would be reduced to approximately 1 human lifetime." She paused, staring at the data scrolling across her screens. The question remains, why would any rational being choose mortality over eternal existence? But even as she asked the question, Hana knew the answer. In the 5 years since she had saved Min-ho, she had experienced more genuine emotion than in the previous 3,000 years combined. The fear of losing him, the joy of their conversations, the pain of separation, all of it had awakened something in her that immortality had slowly smothered. Her people called it contamination, but Hana was beginning to think it might be the opposite. Maybe the Velthari hadn't achieved perfection through immortality. Maybe they had accidentally removed the very thing that made existence meaningful. Back on the Soul's Pride, Min-ho was having his own crisis of purpose. His latest mission had brought him to the Andromeda sector, where humanity was planning its largest colonial expansion yet. Thousands of families were ready to start new lives among the stars, following the paths he had mapped. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command," his communications officer announced. "They're offering you promotion to Admiral of the Colonial Fleet. You'd oversee all human expansion operations." It was the dream job for any explorer. Command of humanity's entire space program, unlimited resources, the chance to shape the future of the species. Minho should have been thrilled. Instead, he felt nothing but emptiness. "Tell them I need." "Time to consider," he said, then retreated to his quarters. Alone in his cabin, Minho pulled up classified intelligence reports about Velthari space. Somewhere out there, Hana was living as an exile because she had chosen to save his life. While he was being offered the highest honors humanity could bestow, she was cut off from everything she had ever known. That night, both of them made the same decision in the loneliness of their separate worlds. Minho opened a secure communication channel and began composing a message to coordinates he wasn't supposed to know. Hana, working late in her laboratory, noticed an incoming transmission on a frequency that only one person in the galaxy would know to use. "I don't know if you'll receive this," Minho's voice crackled through the static. "But I need you to know, every world I've discovered, every colony I've established, feels meaningless without someone to share it with. I keep thinking about our conversations, about the way you made me see the universe differently." On her lonely moon, Hana smiled. "For the first time in months, I've been researching something," she transmitted back. "Something that might change everything, but it's dangerous and there's no going back once it's done. If we're going to have any kind of future together, I need to know. Is a lifetime enough for you when you could have eternity?" Minho's response came immediately. "I'd rather have one real lifetime with you than 1,000 empty years without you." Neither of them knew that their transmissions were being monitored or that forces were already moving to keep them apart forever. The emergency alert reached Minho while he was reviewing colonial reports in his quarters. Red lights flashed throughout. The soul's pride, as his communications officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, you need to see this immediately. We're receiving distress signals from 17 different star systems." Minho rushed to the bridge, where his crew was staring at their screens in disbelief. The holographic display showed a three-dimensional map of local space, with red warning, indicators spreading like an infection across multiple sectors. "What are we looking at?" Minho asked. "Something is destroying entire fleets, sir," his tactical officer reported, her voice shaking. "Both human and Velthari ships. The attacks started 3 hours ago in the Rigel system and are moving outward, in a perfect spiral pattern." Minho studied the data, his blood running cold. Whatever was causing this devastation was unlike anything humanity or the Velthari had ever encountered. Ships were simply vanishing from sensors, leaving behind only scattered debris and unanswered distress calls. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Velthari High Command," the communications officer announced. "They're requesting immediate contact with you specifically." The hologram that appeared on the bridge was someone Minho had hoped never to see again. Commander Zaltara, the Velthari military leader who had ordered the execution of the human diplomatic team years earlier. His expression was grim. "Human Captain Minho," Zaltara said without preamble, "our ancient enemy has awakened. The Harvester has returned." "The what?" Minho demanded. "An artificial intelligence created by the Velthari's predecessors over 50,000 years ago," Zaltara explained. "It was designed as the ultimate weapon, capable of learning and adapting to any threat. But it evolved beyond our control and began viewing all organic life as inefficient and expendable." The pieces started falling into place in Minho's mind. "You're telling me there's a 50,000-year-old AI weapon that's decided to wipe out everything living in the galaxy?" The Harvester enters active periods every few millennia, when galactic civilization has grown large enough to pose a theoretical threat to its programming. It systematically eliminates all advanced organic life, then returns to dormancy until the next cycle begins. Minho felt sick. "How do we stop something like that?" "We cannot," Zaltara admitted. "At least, not alone. The Harvester has already adapted to our weapons and defensive systems. But there is one possibility, an ancient failsafe built into its original programming. However, activating it requires knowledge that only one of our kind possesses." Minho already knew what was coming next. "The exile Hana has spent years studying the Harvester's origins," Zaltara continued. "Her research into forbidden quantum dissolution techniques has given her unique insights into the AI's construction. We need her expertise, and we need your tactical innovations. Together you might be able to find a weakness." 2 days later, Minho's ship arrived at the coordinates Zaltara had provided, a hidden asteroid base where Hana had been conducting her research. When the airlock opened and she stepped aboard the Soul's Pride, Minho felt his heart skip a beat. 5 years had changed her. She looked older somehow, more fragile than he remembered. The perfect crystalline skin that marked all Velthari had developed small imperfections, and her eyes held a weariness that spoke of long, lonely years. "Hello, Minho," she said simply, and the sound of his name in her voice made all the emptiness of the past 5 years disappear. "I'm sorry," he said, not caring that his crew was watching. "I'm sorry you've been alone all this time. I should have found a way to—" "There was no way," Hana interrupted gently. "But we're together now, and that's what matters." As they worked side by side in Hana's laboratory, studying the harvester's attack patterns and searching for weaknesses, Minho realized that their separation had only made their connection stronger. They fell back into their old rhythm immediately, his intuitive leaps complementing her methodical analysis, her ancient knowledge combining with his innovative thinking. "Look at this," Hana said, pulling up a holographic display of the harvester's internal structure. "The AI's consciousness is bound by the same quantum matrices that create our immortality. If we could find a way to disrupt those matrices, we could shut it down," Minho finished. "But how do we get close enough to affect something that—" "Powerful?" Hana was quiet for a long moment, staring at the data. "There is a way," she said finally. "But it would require someone who understands quantum dissolution on a fundamental level. Someone who could voluntarily destabilize their own quantum matrix and use that energy to disrupt the harvester's systems." Minho felt a chill run down his spine. "You're talking about suicide." "Not suicide," Hana corrected. "Sacrifice. The quantum dissolution wouldn't kill me immediately. It would transform me into something compatible with human biology. But the process would also generate enough quantum interference to potentially shut down the harvester permanently." "Hana, no. There has to be another way." She turned to face him, and he saw in her eyes the same determination that had driven her to save his life years earlier. "Minho, I've spent 5 years researching this exact process. I know the risks, and I know the possibilities. If we succeed, the harvester dies and billions of lives are saved. If we fail, everyone dies anyway." "But you'd become mortal," Minho said. "You'd give up immortality for maybe 60 or 70 years of life." Hana smiled, and for the final assault on the harvester began at dawn on the 3rd day. Minho piloted a specially modified fighter craft toward the massive AI construct that hung in space like a dark metal spider, its thousands of mechanical arms reaching out to grab and destroy anything that came too close. "Remember," Hana's voice crackled through his helmet comm, "you only have one chance to get close enough. The quantum disruptor I've built will only work at point-blank range." "I know," Minho replied, gripping the controls tighter as enemy fire lit up the space around him. "Just make sure you're ready with the dissolution field when I give the signal." Behind him, a combined fleet of human and Velthari ships provided cover fire, but they were taking heavy losses. The harvester had adapted to their weapons faster than anyone had predicted. Ship after ship exploded in brilliant fireballs as the ancient AI's defenses tore through their formations. Minho pushed his fighter harder, weaving between massive mechanical tentacles that could crush his small craft like an insect. His hands were sweating inside his gloves, and his heart pounded so hard he could hear it over the engine noise. Everything depended on getting close enough to plant the quantum disruptor directly on the harvester's core. 50 meters, he reported, dodging a blast that vaporized the space where he'd been a second earlier. 40 meters, 30. That's when the harvester's main weapon charged up, a beam of pure energy that could cut through a battleship's armor like paper. Minho saw it coming and tried to dodge, but he was too close and moving too fast. The energy beam caught his fighter's left wing, sending the small craft spinning out of control toward the harvester's hull. Minho fought to regain control, but the ship's systems were failing. Warning lights flashed everywhere and smoke filled the cockpit. "Minho!" Hana's voice was filled with panic. "Your life signs are dropping." "I'm okay," he lied, tasting blood in his mouth. "Deploying the disruptor now." With his last bit of control, Minho crashed his damaged fighter directly into the harvester's. Central core. The quantum disruptor activated on impact, sending waves of disrupting energy through the AI's systems, but the crash had been violent. Minho's body was broken, and his fighter's life support was failing. "Hey, it's working!" Hana shouted from her position on the command ship. "The Harvester's systems are shutting down, but you need to get out of there now." Minho tried to reach for his emergency beacon, but his arm wouldn't move. Something was wrong with his spine, and he could feel consciousness slipping away. "Can't you move?" he whispered into his comm. "Systems failing." The Harvester gave one final mechanical scream before its lights went dark forever. The ancient weapon that had terrorized the galaxy for 50,000 years was finally dead. But as rescue ships raced toward Minho's location, his vital signs continued to drop. By the time they pulled him from the wreckage, Minho was barely alive. The crash had caused massive internal injuries, and exposure to the Harvester's exotic radiation was shutting down his organs one by one. The medical team worked frantically, but their equipment wasn't designed to handle this level of damage. "He's not going to make it," the chief medical officer told Hana as she paced outside the emergency surgery bay. "The radiation damage is too extensive. I'm sorry." Hana stood perfectly still for a moment, processing those words. Then she pushed past the medical officer and into the surgery bay where Minho lay unconscious on the operating table. His skin was pale and covered with strange marks from the radiation exposure. "Everyone out," she ordered. "Ma'am, we can't—" "Out!" Hana's voice carried all the authority of her 3,000 years, and the medical team reluctantly left the room. Alone with Minho, Hana placed her hands on his chest and felt the weak, irregular beating of his heart. She had used the resonance of life-sharing once before to save him, but this time was different. This time the damage was too severe for simple healing energy to fix. "I can't lose you," she whispered. "Not when I've finally learned what it means to truly live." For years, Hana had researched quantum dissolution as a theoretical possibility. But watching Minho dying in front of her, she realized it was more than that. It was her choice between a future with meaning and an eternity of emptiness. When Minho's eyes fluttered open hours later, he found Hana sitting beside his bed, but something was different about her. The perfect crystalline quality of her skin had changed, becoming softer and more human-like. Her eyes, once the color of starlight, now held flecks of brown and gold. "What did you do?" he asked weakly. "I made a choice," Hana replied, taking his hand in hers. "I began the dissolution process while you were unconscious. My immortal quantum matrix is slowly transforming into something compatible with human biology." "Hana, no, you can't give up immortality for me." "I'm not giving it up for you," she said firmly. "I'm choosing it for us, for the possibility of a real life together, with all the joy and pain and uncertainty that comes with being mortal." Minho tried to sit up, but Hana gently pushed him back down. "The dissolution takes time," she explained. "Months, maybe a year, for the transformation to complete, but when it's finished I'll be mortal like you and—" She paused, a shy smile crossing her face. "I'll be able to bear your children." "Children?" Minho's eyes widened. "A family," Hana said. "Something I never thought I wanted in 3,000 years of existence. But watching you nearly die, I realized that what makes life precious isn't how long it lasts. It's who you share it with and what you create together." Outside the medical bay, the news was spreading throughout the fleet. The Harvester was dead, the galaxy was safe, and something unprecedented was happening. An immortal being was choosing mortality for love. As Minho squeezed Hana's hand and felt her heartbeat through her pulse, a heartbeat that would one day stop just like his own, he understood that they had won something far greater than victory over an ancient enemy. They had won the chance to truly live. The transformation began 3 weeks after the Harvester's defeat. Hana had moved to a small research station orbiting a quiet moon, where she could undergo the dissolution process away from curious eyes. Minho, still recovering from his injuries, insisted on staying with her despite the doctor's protests. "You don't understand what you're asking," Dr. Kim, the lead human physician, warned them both. "No one has ever attempted voluntary quantum dissolution before. We have no idea what to expect." Hana sat on the edge of the medical bed, her crystalline skin already showing the first signs of change. Small cracks had appeared along her arms and neck, not painful but visible, like fault lines in perfect crystal beginning to shift. "I've run every simulation possible," she told the doctor calmly. "The theoretical models all point to the same outcome. My quantum-bound consciousness will gradually separate from the crystalline matrix and bind to organic neural pathways instead." "Theoretical models," Dr. Kim repeated skeptically. "What if you're wrong? What if the process kills you?" Hana looked at Minho, who was sitting in a wheelchair nearby, still too weak to stand for long periods. "Then at least I'll die having truly lived for the first time in 3,000 years. The first phase lasted 2 months, and it was unlike anything the medical team had ever witnessed. Hana's perfect crystalline skin gradually became more translucent, and sometimes they could see light pulsing beneath the surface, her immortal essence literally reshaping itself. "It doesn't hurt," Hana assured Minho during one of his worried visits. "It's more like waking up from a very long dream. I can feel things I never felt before." "What kind of things?" Hana pressed her hand to her chest, wonder in her eyes. "My heart. I have a heartbeat now, Minho. It's so strange. This constant rhythm inside me reminding me that I'm alive. But as the weeks passed, the transformation became more intense. Hana's body temperature began fluctuating wildly as her metabolism shifted from crystalline energy absorption to organic biological processes. She experienced hunger for the first time in millennia, and the sensation terrified her. "I don't understand," she told Minho one evening, staring at a bowl of soup she couldn't bring herself to eat. "How do you live with this constant need, this emptiness inside that demands to be filled?" "You learn to enjoy it," Minho said gently, taking a spoonful of soup himself. "Hunger makes food taste better. Thirst makes water more precious. Even pain makes happiness more meaningful." The most difficult part came during the 4th month, when Hana's quantum consciousness began actively separating from her crystalline form. She would wake up screaming, her body convulsing as ancient neural pathways dissolved and new ones formed. Minho held her through the worst episodes, whispering reassurances, while medical monitors showed her vital signs fluctuating in impossible ways. "I can feel myself changing," she gasped during one particularly intense episode. "It's like I'm becoming someone else entirely. What if I'm not the same person when this is over?" "You'll still be you," Minho promised, though privately he worried about the same thing. "The person who saved my life, who chose exile over betraying her principles, who's brave enough to give up immortality for love. That person doesn't change." By the 6th month, Hana's appearance had transformed dramatically. Her skin was no longer the perfect crystal of the Velthari, but it wasn't quite human either. It had a subtle, luminescent quality, as if lit from within by starlight. Her eyes, once pure silver, now showed flecks of brown and gold that shifted with her emotions. "Look-y," she said one morning, pressing Minho's hand to her chest. "Feel that." Her heartbeat was strong and steady now, no longer the erratic pulse of a consciousness learning to inhabit an organic form. It was the heartbeat of someone fully alive. "I'm mortal now," she whispered, and for the first time the word didn't sound like a curse. "This heart will beat for maybe 60 or 70 more years, and then it will stop forever." "Are you afraid?" Minho asked. Hana was quiet for a long moment, listening to the sound of her own mortality. "Terrified," she admitted, "but also excited. Every day matters now, in a way it never did before. Every moment with you is precious because we have a limited number of them." The final phase of transformation brought the most remarkable change of all. Hana's reproductive system, dormant for 3 millennia in her crystalline form, began functioning for the first time. The medical scans showed that she was now capable of bearing children, hybrid offspring that would carry traits from both species. "It's impossible," Dr. Kim marveled, reviewing the latest test results. "Your DNA has completely restructured itself. You're not human, but you're not Velthari anymore either. You're something entirely new." Hana looked at herself in the mirror of her quarters, studying the being she had become. She was no longer the immortal crystal being who had first met Minho with hatred and contempt, but she wasn't human either. She was something in between, a bridge between two species, mortal but touched by eternity. "Do you regret it?" Minho asked, finding her there in the quiet of the evening. Hana turned to him with a smile that held all the warmth and vulnerability of newfound mortality. "Ask me in 60 years, she said, taking his hand and placing it over her beating heart. "But I don't think I will." For the first time in 3,000 years, Hana felt truly alive and truly free. 2 years after Hana's transformation was complete, she stood in the small medical bay of their research station, holding a miracle in her arms. Their daughter had been born just hours earlier, and Minho couldn't stop staring at the tiny being they had created together. "She's perfect," he whispered, gently touching the baby's incredibly soft skin. Like her mother, she had a subtle, luminescent quality that made her seem to glow from within, but her features were distinctly human. Her eyes, when they opened, showed the same shifting colors as Hana's, silver with flecks of gold that seemed to move like stars. "What should we name her?" Hana asked, marveling at how light yet substantial the child felt in her arms. After 3,000 years of existence, she had never held anything so precious. "Sujin," Minho said without hesitation. "It means precious. Truth in Korean, because that's what she is, proof that love can bridge any divide." Dr. Kim ran the initial medical scans with barely contained excitement. "This is unprecedented," she muttered, studying the readings. "Her neural activity is off the charts, far beyond normal human levels, but her physical development appears completely healthy." What they discovered over the following weeks amazed everyone on the research team. Little Sujin seemed to understand things that should have been impossible for an infant. When Hana spoke to her in the ancient Velthari language, the baby's eyes would track the sound patterns with an intensity that suggested comprehension. When Minho played music from Earth, she would move her tiny hands as if trying to conduct the melodies. "Look at this," Minho called to Hana one morning. He had placed several objects in front of 6-month-old Sujin, a crystal formation from the Velthari homeworld, a flower from Earth, and a piece of advanced technology from their ship. Without hesitation, the baby reached for all three simultaneously, as if understanding that they were connected in some way. "She sees patterns," Hana realized, watching her daughter examine the objects with curious intensity. Just like Velthari quantum intuition, but combined with human creativity. She's not just observing, she's imagining new possibilities. Word of Sujin's birth had spread throughout both human and Velthari space, causing unprecedented reactions in both societies. On Earth, some celebrated the birth as proof of humanity's ability to adapt and evolve. Others worried about what it meant for the future of pure human genetics. The Velthari reaction was even more dramatic. For the first time in their recorded history, young Velthari were questioning the value of immortality. If Hana could find meaning and joy in mortality, perhaps their endless existence wasn't the blessing they had always believed it to be. "The Council of Eternals has requested a meeting," Commander Zaltara informed them during a holographic transmission. His expression was troubled. "Some of our people are asking about voluntary dissolution. They want to know if they too can choose mortality." "That's their right," Hana replied firmly, bouncing Sujin gently in her arms. "Every being should be able to choose their own path." "But you don't understand the implications," Zaltara protested. "If significant numbers of Velthari choose mortality, our entire civilization could collapse within a few centuries." Minho stepped closer to Hana and their daughter. "Maybe it's time for both our civilizations to evolve. Maybe the future isn't about humans staying human and Velthari staying immortal. Maybe it's about finding something better together." As if responding to her father's words, Sujin made a soft cooing sound and reached toward the holographic image of Zaltara. Even through the transmission, the Velthari commander seemed moved by the gesture. "She is beautiful," he admitted, quietly. "And her quantum signature is unlike anything we have ever recorded. She truly is something new." By her first birthday, Sujin was demonstrating abilities that amazed scientists from both species. She could sense quantum fluctuations like a Velthari, but she used that information in uniquely human ways, not just to understand existing patterns, but to imagine new ones. When she played with toys, she didn't just stack blocks or solve puzzles. She created art that seemed to capture the movement of stars and the music of planetary orbits. "She's going to change everything," Hannah said one evening as they watched their daughter sleep. "Not just because of what she can do, but because of what she represents." Minho nodded, taking Hannah's hand in his. "A future where differences don't divide us, they complete us." Outside their small station, both human and Velthari societies were beginning to change. Mixed marriages between humans and transformed Velthari were becoming more common. Young people from both species were questioning the old assumptions about superiority and separation. But the most profound change was happening right there in their family quarters, where a mortal woman who had once been immortal sang lullabies to a child who would never have existed if not for love's power to transcend every boundary. As Hannah held Sujin close, feeling her own heartbeat synchronized with her daughter's tiny pulse, she understood something that 3,000 years of immortality had never taught her. Life wasn't precious because it lasted forever. It was precious because it was shared, because it created new possibilities, because it left the universe a little more beautiful than it had been before. Their daughter was proof that the greatest achievements came not from conquering differences, but from celebrating them. In her small hands, she held the future of two species, learning to become something greater together. Outside the asteroid base, the Harvester continued its systematic destruction of galactic civilization. But inside the laboratory, two beings from different worlds held each other close and planned to save the universe with the most human thing of all: the willingness to sacrifice everything for love.